Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Journey Forward with Jory Rose. I am here with Lisa Erickson today, and I am most certain we are going to have so much to connect around. So Lisa, thank you so much for coming on the show. Please introduce yourself and share with our audience who you are and what has been your journey forward to get to you, to how you show up in the world today and the gifts that you bring to the world.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And I love this name and this theme, Journey Forward, since that's really what we're all trying to do. And yes, Lisa Erickson, and I am an energy worker and an author of Chakra Empowerment for Women. And I do energy work on a lot of different things, mostly chakra-based, but my specialties are really women's energetics and life phases. So that includes things like postpartum and perimenopause and menopause and energy work for those phases of life, how our energy body changes. I also, one of my other specialties is energy work for sexual trauma healing and self-guided chakra work that can complement a woman's healing journey, along with other tools as part of healing from any type of sexual abuse or assault. So those are kind of the main things I work with, but also energy work for manifesting and for stress management and just the ways that we can work with our energy body in the moment in our day.
That's beautiful. So Lisa, I'm so fascinated by this, and I know it's going to be a few months from when we actually post this episode, but as we're speaking this morning, I just got back from Costa Rica and had an immense amount of energy work done. And I feel so aligned and so clear and very healed in so many different ways. I'm a big believer in energy work, and I don't even really know the ways in which it works, but I believe that it does. So I imagine that that's a big component of receiving the healing from it. But let's go back to the basics for those who are listening who maybe have never had any energy work done. So can you please define, when you say energy work, what is actually happening and what is it that you're actually doing?
Yeah. Well, first, the way that I like to describe the energy body itself is kind of this layer between our physical body, our psyche, and our spirit. And there's mappings that have come
pause that 1
Yes.
second. I just want to really get that clear, because that you said that quickly, but I think it seems really important. It's the space between
The physical body, psyche, and spirit.
Yeah. So it all what's in between. Mm-hmm. Okay,
And
now you can go on.
So there's different techniques. Well, there's different mappings that have come to us from all over the world, different cultures historically, different ways of mapping the energy body. The chakras is one that people may have heard. The word chakra or energy centers that primarily comes from India, and it's associated with yoga traditions. Then we have the meridians, primarily comes from Chinese medicine, but there's actually many different energy center mappings that have come through two different kinds of traditions, spiritual traditions and energy medicine or healing traditions. And so we have a variety now in the West. We have access to a lot of different techniques and tools. And some people have put that together with psychology. So they're using that kind of intersection and working more with emotions in the energy body. Some work more specifically with physical symptoms. So there's a lot of different ways that you can work with the energy body, but what ties it all together is, this idea of holistic mind, body, healing, and growth, that what's going on in our physical body is linked to what's going on in our psyche and our spirit. And so energy work, you can enter it from any of those levels.
And the more work I do, the more I experience my own life and healing, the more I am absolutely convinced, without any question, of that interconnection, how we can separate out our physical health from our emotional, spiritual, mental health. It seems preposterous that we would try to separate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we have so much science now backing it up in terms of how stress impacts our body, how that impacts so many health issues, our ability to heal, immune system. as well as many things that focus on mind state and even spiritual beliefs and how that can impact your ability to heal. So we have science, and then we have a lot that science hasn't been able to measure yet, but is there, in terms of what is energy work, there's so many different kinds. So there's Reiki, for example, where a healer, or you might do it yourself, is sort of channeling energy into you, right? Then there is different techniques, crystals, and even acupuncture actually is energy healing. It's putting needles that correspond to the energy meridians in the body. I focus on what I call self-guided energy work, which means most of my tools, I'm really trying to help someone learn to focus on an energy center in their own body for the purpose of clearing and empowering the physical or emotional obstructions or powers, or positive feelings, vibrations that can come from that. And then I'm aiding that with my own awareness. So as an energy worker, that's the work I'm doing. But ultimately, I'm trying to empower people with tools they can reuse. So it isn't sort of a me simply channeling energy, and that's part of it, but that's not the full picture.
Right. What are some of the ways in which people can begin to do that work on their own? So as you as their guide, I imagine, and I know a lot of what you do is breath work, mindfulness, meditation. So how do you go about figuring out where something might be stuck? If someone comes to you with some symptoms or ailments or feeling like, I know I'm blocked, but I don't know exactly what's going on, what is the ways in which we can begin to uncover or investigate what energy is getting stuck? And, walk us through that process of what that might look like.
Yeah. Well, so for me as a diagnostician, right?
Mm-hmm.
Each chakra is mapped to different physical parts of the body, different glands, etc. So I'm first, in terms of a medical history, that's going to inform it. It's also linked to different aspects of our psyche. So that's going to inform it. But then there's also phases of our energy body. And especially for women, there's different phases of the energy body that tie to our kind of reproductive life cycles. And so knowing someone's age and whether or not they have children and things like that also ties into it and gives me a sense. And then there's just cultural conditioning. So for example, most women need boundary work. That's not always the case. Most men need fluidity work, right? So that maps to, I'm going to work more on the third chakra with women, which ties to boundaries. And I might work more on the second chakra with men, more on the heart. Worthiness is an issue for almost everyone. So that is everyone. And then it really depends what someone's reporting. If for trauma, if I'm working with trauma, there's often patterns of kind of disconnecting from the body. So we might be working a lot with the first chakra, which has to do with tying the energy body to the body. So history, medical history, personal history, and what people are saying they're coming to me for in the moment will really define what's the first energy center we focus on. Mm-hmm. But they're all connected. So eventually you're doing all of them. But what are you focusing on first?
I also would add into their transgenerational trauma, right?
Yes.
That's been something that I'm so fascinated by, the epigenetics of what we carry from our ancestors and family history. And it's fascinating to me, the things that we are unconsciously getting embedded into ourselves and affecting our health, our flow, our awareness, right? Even relationships at times, to recognize, wow, but there's a lot that we are carrying within us that many people, I think, walk around not aware of the impact of this multi-layered, very complex system of energies.
Yeah. And I have run into that a lot, where I'm working with individuals and they say, I do not, that I know of, have experienced sexual trauma in this lifetime, but I seem to have a lot of the patterns of someone who has. And then eventually they find out their mother tells them, when they're in their 40s, their 50s, oh, I was sexually abused as a child, right? And so there's almost like this imprinting that carried through generation. And science, as you mentioned, has now really validated that in a lot of different ways.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the treatments that I did in Costa Rica, I don't know if you've ever heard of this. It was called biofield tuning.
I know there was different types of bio work. Yeah, biofield work.
And the biofield tuning was crazy. Being on a massage table and using a tuning fork to go through the different energy centers, and based on where the practitioner was standing was in relation to what degree of ancestral line we were healing. Like the closer was more, current family, and the further away was more ancestral, the right side being the masculine, the left being the feminine, and different frequencies at different energy centers. It was really interesting. And, that we all have like this 6-foot diameter of energy surrounding us, and how we can clear that. So what are some of the ways when you're working with someone you come in to be able, like what's the actual practices looking like?
Yeah. So in private session work, and I also do workshops, usually we do a setup where we're really I'm guiding them through setting up kind of the energy and connecting with their subtle body. And I can sense a lot from that. And then we're talking for quite a bit about this personal history. Now, after the first session, we're not doing that anymore, but we're saying in that session. And then I'm often starting with an emotion based on what they're primarily experiencing. So if what they're experiencing now is a lot of anxiety in their life, and they feel it's tied to this past or a medical issue or whatever, we're going to start with, okay, how do you feel that anxiety in your body? Because energy work really is very embodied, which it sounds like you really experienced with this biofield work. I mean, that really is the point, that even if you're not working with a physical symptom, energy work's very embodied. It is that vibration in your physical body that you feel it. So I'll often, okay, describe for me this moment that was anxious. What is that in your body? And we're really trying to hone into where someone feels it. And very often then we might focus on the nearest chakra. So that's another way that we might work. Because often when you focus in on that, different kinds of memories arise and things like that. So I work a lot with focusing on a particular chakra, particular visual that brings forth the energy. Are we trying to empower? Are we trying to balance? Are we trying to soothe? Are we trying to release? And if we're releasing statements that help the psyche sort of tuning what we're releasing, and then affirmations that are the counter, the journey forward. That's why I like that. It's easy with release work to leave that part out. You need to sort of say, okay, what am I replacing this with? It's really reframing. In psychotherapy terms, reframing, but we're trying to do it vibrationally in your energy body. We talk about creating new neural networks in your brain. We're trying to create new vibrational patterns in your energy body. Then from the perspective of energy work, from my perspective, speed up the creation of neural pathways, because that is part of what energy work can do. So that was a lot. So I'll let you say
No, I love that. And, so much of the work that I do is about creating those new neural pathways through mindfulness practices, through awareness, through recognizing our patterns, being able to reframe them. I think reframing is a really underrated tool. What's another lens I can look through this? It's going to impact my entire experience about it, right? One of the things that I often say, it's not about the thing, it's how you relate to the thing. Right? How you name it, how you experience it is going to impact how it gets imprinted. So what you're saying is we know that neuroscience, through neuroplasticity, that we can actually rewire that brain. But I love what you said, that we are rewiring those vibrational patterns through breathing, through those affirmations. I love massage. I would get a massage every week if I could afford it. And I'm
with you on that one.
that will be like when I know I really made it. Whatever that arbitrarily means. But when I'm getting a massage, I tend to have a mantra. And I generally am afraid if I fall asleep, then I won't really gain the benefit of the massage, even though I know my body's receiving the work from it. But I always have the mantra, release, 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 because I know whatever's being worked on is in pain. My shoulders are tight, my lower back, because I'm holding something in there.
Yeah.
So I would imagine in your work, helping people name what is it that you think you're holding, and where can you be able to choose to let that go? Because it is a choice on some level.
It is a choice. At first, you have to find it. So sometimes that's what makes you realize it's a choice, right? Usually we have these reactive patterns. We know they're causing us suffering in some way. Getting to the root of that reactive pattern. What's the hurt underneath there? What's the fear underneath there? Where is it held? So often we are holding those as a pattern. It is like our energy body is like software in a way, and it's holding these reactive patterns, and they link into our neural networks. But that's what's so fascinating about energy body mappings, the chakra system, for example. It's always, even in ancient medicine, its main connections were always said to be the nervous system and the glandular system. That is part of Ayurvedic medicine right there. So our whole endocrine system, all the chemicals that are associated with our emotions and our nervous system, right? Those are really what you're working with when you're working with the chakra body. And so, yeah, often you're working with literally a wound associated with a memory that's almost held, like you never processed it. That's how trauma is often defined, an experience we weren't able to integrate into our view of, of ourselves or the world, right? And so we're trying to process it so it becomes an experience. When it's not, what also develops on top of that then, which is often what we're dealing with also, is all the reactive patterns that, we talk about in case of trauma: fear, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, all this stuff. Really, that applies to a lot of different things, whether we call it trauma or not, just experiences that we have difficulty dealing with. So those are written into our system. So sometimes we're dealing with a wound, releasing that. Sometimes we're dealing with releasing the pattern. Whenever I get hurt, I lash out, right? Whenever I get hurt, I withdraw. We're working with trying to get to that pattern and rewriting it, reframing it.
It's so powerful. And, I always love to reiterate to our listeners that trauma does not have to be what it used to be believed, the big capital T trauma in which we had some life-threatening situation. And I think it's helpful to have a much looser based definition of trauma. And I like using Faith Harper's definition. She wrote the book Unfuck Your Brain. And she's brilliant, and I've had her on the show before. She says it's anything that dysregulates our nervous system.
There you go. Yeah.
And that might be oversimplified. And I believe that having a simple definition, because then we can really have compassion for ourselves at the wounds that we do carry, and that it's not our fault. They don't have to be big to be powerful, right? And we also know enough lowercase t traumas accumulate in the brain to be experienced at the same level as pain as a capital T. So we accumulate all these little wounds or these paper cuts, we store them, and then we wonder, why do we have chronic back pain? Or why do we have difficulty being vulnerable in relationship, right? Whether it's something physical or relational.
Yeah. Well, and that example you gave is perfect, because very often a physical pain like that is tied to something, an experience we're holding like that. But then the reactive pattern, why can't I be vulnerable? Okay, I shield whenever I feel like something, I'm afraid of intimacy. That reactive pattern, I'm going to shield, I'm going to shut myself down. That's then a reactive pattern, which is sort of a whole another thing that reflects more on an emotional thing. And that's what we're working with the chakra body. So with that back pain, I would often start with the pain itself, right? And maybe talking to it, asking about it. But then we're most likely going to end up doing sacral chakra work. We're going to end up doing, because that's linked to the very lower back, right? If that's where it is. And it has to do with fluidity. And that's often what's missing when it comes to back issues, right? So we're going to be trying to activate the sacral chakra. And then usually you discover, there's like all of these other themes in my life: sensuality, sexuality, creativity, etc., that are also issues for me, that we're also, that energy is impacted, with walls around the heart. Like, we're going to be working with the heart chakra for sure, right? If we have issues with vulnerability, we're going to be working with that, but we're also going to be working with boundaries, which has more to do with the navel and the root, because you want to have a sense of, I can be vulnerable. You feel safe to be vulnerable if you know that you can hold a certain boundary that you need for your own safety. So it's about, it's when you don't trust your boundaries that you have to shut down completely. So you're working with that balance of opening your heart with boundaries, and that's really reflected in your energy body. So there's all these different ways that these things map to different chakras.
Yeah. So maybe for a baseline, again, for those who aren't super familiar, you go through each chakra and say perhaps what is the energy that is being held at each one, and what a typical ailment or emotional experience or relational experience might look like if it is blocked or if it is not clear.
Yeah, great. And I'll use the 7 chakra model that is the most common in the West. It is important to know there's other systems that map them a little differently. But the root chakra, which we associate with our tailbone, our feet, the base of our body, the base of our skeleton, the base of our nervous system is linked to our skeletal system and our nervous system and our immune system and our adrenals and it's linked with our sense of embodiment, feeling grounded in our body. So anyone who has issues with really feeling present in their body, anyone who has body image issues, anyone who's developed kind of disassociative tendencies as a survival mechanism, we're often working with that root chakra to feel embodied and create a different relationship to the body. Mm-hmm. Should I just keep going all the way up?
Keep going up, keep going all the way up. I want to actually look quickly in that root chakra one. I've never associated that so much with body image. I've always really seen that as just security and foundation. But what's interesting is I often associate that root chakra as, that community, that tribal sense of connection. But I haven't recognized it as a connection back to self. I've always seen it as connection to others.
Mm-hmm. I think with body image, that is a multifaceted issue because it has to do with worthiness, which we might map to the heart, etc. But I think what can happen with body image is that there's hatred of the body that develops. Mm-hmm. And if you hate your body, no matter how much you're working on it, which very often someone who hates their body's working on it constantly, right? That energy actually does disrupt that feeling of truly being grounded and embodied in your body. It does impact the root chakra. So body image is connected in that way. I mean, root chakra is being able to feel fully present in your body. That is the experience of body love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So I wouldn't say that body image is, only root chakra, but
sure.
It's really linked. Yeah, it's really linked.
Okay, so let's move on up.
Yeah. So sacral chakra is fluidity. So that root chakra is linked to the earth element and the sacral chakra is linked to the water element. So it is our ability to sort of go with the flow and all of that. Also sensuality, sexuality, it's linked to our emotions. Root chakra is linked to the physical body, sacral chakra to the emotional body. And it's really linked to feminine power and the feminine as it's represented in no matter how you identify. Mm-hmm. That kind of energy. This chakra, it's interesting. It's the only one in biological men and women that a different gland, right? Because for women, it's ovaries. For men, it's the prostate. So it's also the chakra that is linked to the phases of life that are tied to a reproductive cycle. So pregnancy, perimenopause, menopause, menstruation, all these things impact our energy body. So that's a very fascinating one that you can spend a lot of time on, that in our culture, it's all the stuff everyone's uncomfortable with: sex, menstruation, menopause, all the stuff no one wants to talk about.
Emotions,
right, and emotions, yeah. So what it's like the shadow chakra. It's having its moment right now, but it's a tough one, and it's one that everyone needs work on.
I have a quick funny story about second chakra that I think you'll appreciate. Towards the end of my marriage many years ago, my house flooded. And we ended up having to completely gut our kitchen. The dishwasher flooded and it was this big catastrophe. And we ended up potentially we were going to separate, and then the house flooded. So we stayed together, and I took that as we're supposed to rebuild, right? I'm very spiritual in how I connect to what's going on around me. And we ended up, after remodeling what needed to be fixed, 3 months after the remodel was done, found a new house. Weren't planning on moving, but found a new house. And 6 months living in the new house, this house flooded. And I had a friend say to me, your insurance company is going to stop processing your claims and they're going to start sending you to an energy healer. You need to get your second chakra healed. And, at the time I was newer in my understanding of my energy centers and how it was connected to what was going on in my life. And ironically, the person who had told me that, she said, you really need to go immerse yourself into water element, because these floods are a representation of the lack of flow in your life, and to, immerse into the element of water will help get some balance back. I hadn't seen that woman for many years, and I literally ran into her at Esalen, which is one of my most favorite retreat centers in Big Sur, which are natural hot springs overlooking the Pacific Ocean. She ended up being in the exact same tub that I was sitting in. And I'm like, look at that. Here I am immersed in, healing waters. but understanding these floods that were happening and connecting it to the lack of flow in my second chakra, it was showing up all over the place. But that's my funny
Oh
second
my
chakra
gosh,
story.
that is amazing. No, I love it. And I've had my share of floods and plumbing issues in my life. So it's really interesting how the elements reflect and
Oh,
the
yes.
inner outer. Yeah, all of that. And I have a ton of water, sort of, I'm a lot of water as it is. So elementally. Yeah. And so this is that flow is something, it isn't supported in our culture in so many different ways. Right. And sexual energy, either female sexual energy. There's so many layers, right?
There's so many layers there. Yeah, we can have a whole hour just talking about my floods.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, I work with this a lot because I work with sexual trauma, right? So I work with this one a lot because this is one that gets really denigrated, that energy and all the blame, the victim stuff that happens, and sexual harassment too, just all the blame yourself stuff. Really interesting. So yeah, so a lot of work there. Then the third chakra is sort of the solar plexus navel region. I actually prefer to work with the focal point at the navel, which is at the bottom of that area, tied to the digestive system, tied to the pancreas, and also really tied to boundaries and the element fire and the mental. So a lot of people think, oh, the mental must be the third eye in your head, but it's actually the third chakra, the mental energy. We often talk about, the gut is kind of our second brain. We have more nerves in there than any other part of our body, so many things reflected in our digestive system. So I work a lot with that third chakra in terms of boundaries and our relationship to power. It's self-definition and all those kinds of things, but it just a lot with our sense of our own power and relationship to power with other people.
Yeah, I always think about that one when I have clients who are experiencing boundary issues, and where are they giving their power away? Where are they not holding space for their own sense of self? Yeah. And I have a client right now, that a young woman who diabetic, has celiac, has PCOS, and it's all, I'm not denying the physical symptoms. It's all third chakra, the holder of family secrets, the inability to speak the truth. I have a great book called The Book of Chakras that whenever I have a client who's either ill or going to have surgery, we always look up of, okay, what else was going on? So we can really understand, all right. And it's always spot on, Lisa, always. Yeah. I have never brought those points of connection together and someone's like, nope, that doesn't make sense whatsoever. No one's ever said that.
Well, and I work with so many people with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and things like that. And boundary work is always so important. There's so much we take into that part of our body when our boundaries are not held. Or we can wall up, right? We can also have people that just like create walls, and so they have no connection in their life, and they have to learn how to trust a looser boundary, or when to know when to kind of relax it. And a lot of important themes there, especially for women often. So heart obviously is more obvious, right? This is, physically it is linked to our heart and lungs, and the heart also is a gland. It does produce endocrines. And it's really, love and be loved, our sense of balance, our sense of worthiness, our sense of being deserving of love, vulnerability, intimacy, relationships, and our way that we relate and what we project onto other people and what we think we need from them versus want. And all of these kinds of things. So, and our ability to be joyful, our ability to be silly, all these sorts of
playful.
It's the center of our energy body. It is, there's almost no one we're not doing heart work. It is the way what it means to be human. So then the throat is tied to the thyroid and everything related to the neck. Also, it's tied to the mouth and ears, because it is tied to our ability to both express ourselves and hear feedback. Right. It's a the two-way chakra. And so much about authenticity as well. Like, is the inner getting out? Am I able to, is there a block between the inner and the outer? The way do I speak? People pleasing is my favorite when it comes to the throat to work on. It is a boundary issue also, but it's like, have we been conditioned to speak to stay safe? Are we constantly monitoring, what do people want to hear from me? giving them what they want, either because that's the strategy we developed as a child to stay safe, or that's our form of worthiness and validation. How do we change our speech so it is authentic speech that we're able to actually communicate? So that's a lot what the throat is like. It's either a gateway or it's a wall.
Right. And I want to harness one thing you just said, because it's a word I've been using so much with my clients, is that we develop these strategies.
Exactly.
And I've actually replaced the word patterns with strategies, because patterns to me can feel like they're perhaps more ingrained. This is just who I am. This is just the way I do things. And yes, that may be true, but fundamentally, the more I'm deeper into the spiritual work with my clients, even as a therapist, right, marriage family therapist, we develop strategies, and they are strategies to stay safe, no matter what the scenario. You know, likely at a young age, we develop them as a tool, as a strategy. So when we can see them as a strategy, I will also say, well, what was the conditions and context in which the strategy was developed? And let's look and see that perhaps the conditions and context were no longer present. And yet we've held on to the strategy because it's familiar. It's a habit, not necessarily our pattern, but just what we have done for survival at its most root level: emotional, physical, mental, spiritual survival, relational.
And when you really realize you developed it as a strategy, for one thing, you can meet it with compassion. And that's so important, as opposed to self-judgment. Why won't this part of me change? Why do I keep doing it? Oh, wait a minute. I did this because I needed to feel safe. Now it's become a habit, and I need to create a new habit. What's the new habit that I want to create? And that's the whole reframing, journey forward piece, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I just wanted to add that. Okay, moving on to the sixth.
Yes. Okay. Third eye. So insight, the I words: insight, intuition, imagination, vision of all types. So we often associate it with sort of mystic vision, but it's really, if you want, something different for your future, you have to be able to imagine it. So it really has to do with manifesting and goal achievement as well. Where are you headed? What are you trying to be? What do you look like? What is your life like 5 years from now? Is actually an act of the third eye. And when that third eye is blocked, people can't do that. They can't see anything other than their current present reality. So it is important.
Is that also where people get stuck only in the past? Would that be a third eye issue?
Yeah, I have a tool where I actually love to imagine it's actually an eye, and you're turning it forward. And you're imagining.
I love that.
The wisdom from the past is pouring in, because that's all you really want to keep from the past.
Right.
The wisdom that you've gleaned from your past.
That's a beautiful
But
vision.
now I'm facing forward. So important also with trauma at a certain point in the healing process, not too early, but at a certain point, to be able to be like, okay, now I'm facing forward. Yeah, absolutely. So third eye is fascinating. You link to the pituitary, and the crown's linked to the pineal. So we've got those glands all the way down, and really linked to knowing beyond words, non-conceptual knowing. And then the crown, which is linked to the pineal, as I said, birth and death, sleep cycles, all sorts of other things. But faith, it's often connected with spirituality. And certainly if someone considers themselves spiritual, this is that connection to grace and spiritual experience. But I like to reframe it as purpose and your values.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, however you get that in your life, that sense of your values and your purpose, what is meaningful in your life, what brings meaning, that's what that crown chakra is about. So when I'm working with someone who really feels disillusioned, lack of purpose, meaning, we may be working with opening up the crown, and that doesn't mean we're trying to, see, it's not necessarily a spiritual process. It's more of a meaning-making process. Yeah.
I love that. So as we begin to wrap up, Lisa, what are some tools or takeaways that someone who's listening right now, as we went through those chakras, might recognize, oh, this is where I tend to feel stuck most? Do you have different mantras for each one, or different breathing practices? You said that you really want people to become self-empowered as self-healers, which is really beautiful. I love, that model of, I actually say as a therapist, I adopt more of the Weight Watchers versus Tony Craig model of weight loss, in that I don't want you to only get to your goals by coming to me each week, right? Then I'm actually not doing my job. I want you to be able to come to me give you all the tools you need for you to do it on your own. That's knowing that you can always come back. I'm never going anywhere on your baseline, but I don't want to be the reason someone's doing well.
Yeah.
Right. So what are some of the ways that people can, on their own, heal different parts of themselves?
Well, very simply, someone can focus on any chakra. And that's what my book, Chakra Empowerment for Women, is focused on. It's very specific for each of the chakras, and then 5 more that are multi-chakra tools for boundaries and healing and things like that. Tools that are focused on visualization and affirmation, because those I found are the 2 that are the most accessible to most people. Then there are pranayamas, breathing techniques, and many other forms of working with the chakras, crystals, other physical means that individuals might want to explore. But the easiest thing you can do is focus on a part of your body. You can focus right here on your chest. You can place your hands there, and you can bring your focus there. It's mindfulness practice. If you're visual, you can visualize light there, and you can affirm the energies associated with that chakra that you want to most feel. I am worthy. I'm loved. I'm supported. Simple, right? Simple. That's like the baseline that you can do with any chakra. And then there's so many layers to ways you might release and things like that. That's really the essence of all the kind of workshops and my book is opening up how you can do that yourself. And I think exploring, and some people are more physical. They love crystals. They love, other people are more conceptual. They love visualization. So it's really, what is your doorway into connecting to your energy body?
I love that so much. Lisa, where could people find your book, attend a workshop, or follow you? What are some ways that they can connect further?
Well, my website is enlightenedenergetics.com, and the book is on Amazon and everywhere else, and Llewellyn. It was published by Llewellyn Worldwide, if someone's familiar with that. And then on Instagram and Facebook, I'm Chakra Empowerment.
Wonderful. I will have all those links in the show notes. And Lisa, I am so appreciative of the work that you're doing, and you explain it so clearly, which I really appreciate as well, because sometimes this can be really esoteric work, and it doesn't have to be. And I think because it doesn't, for some people, feel intuitive as an understanding of this mind-body connection might feel a little bit further of access for them to be able to embody on their own. And I love your approach and the simplicity in which you're able to explain it, because I think, again, it makes it more accessible for people as additional tools of healing, as well as that self-healing, which we all need. No one is immune from that.
Yeah, well, and I so appreciate your approach that you're bringing together science and therapy and these holistic modalities, and you're open to it. Because I do feel like most people, it's a mixture, right, of what works for them. And so I really appreciate anyone who's open to combining.
Thank you. And I'm combining a few different additional modalities these days, because we need a different door into the same room.
Yes, exactly.
And as a therapist, I've really actually, ironically, have come to believe there's a huge limitation to talk therapy. Huge limitation. It's great. I love it. I love what I do. And we cannot assume we can talk our way through whatever's going on, right? So to be able to drop further into the body, we got to embody it. We've got to access it through different avenues. So this is really wonderful. I really appreciate your time today, and would love to stay connected, because I think, the more I can help share your work out there gives rise to the ability of, we have the possibility of self-healing, which is really, I think, what we all want, right?
Exactly. And the world, and so many people in such need of it.
Well, and the ripple
every
effect,
day, right?
That ripple effect. And I mostly, I have my hand over my heart as I think about just the practice of compassion, that when we can offer that to ourselves and actually believe it and embody it, we have an easier ability to extend it to others, or the more we extend it to others, the easier we can then bring it back to ourselves. And that interconnectivity and that higher level consciousness is what the world so desperately needs right now.
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for being a guest. And I hope that those who are listening, that this is perhaps one of the avenues for you to explore a little bit further. And if this episode has spoken to you, I invite you to give a rating, a review, a share, so we can help others journey forward into more healing and health. All right, everyone, take care and be well.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat, visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.